I'm a retired police captain in North Myrtle Beach. I retired in 2001 from policing, and I went later to the city of Conway and wrote grants for the city over there in every department. And then left there and went to Brunswick County, and I coordinated and run their code enforcement department. But I'm a native of North Myrtle Beach, one of the few you'll find around. And I was born and raised in Horry County. And for 10 years of my life, I lived in Myrtle Beach. And the reason we moved up on the north end in 1960s when we moved up here was my dad was the first telephone man in North Myrtle Beach, the only one they had. And so we came up here. It was a big change going from Myrtle Beach to here. And of course, the road was just a single lane going down that separated two cities. It seemed like it took forever to get from one city to the other. And a little time frame when we moved up here, John Kennedy was having the debates with Richard Nixon at that time, and he ultimately became the president of the United States. And I went to Ocean Drive Elementary. The school's still there. Call it primary school down 11th Avenue. And so I went to high school at the old Wampee Little River High School. And of course that converted over, I think, 1971 to North Myrtle Beach, with integration and so forth. But I went to Wampee. I graduated in 1968, and I went into the service after that, and went into the Air Force. And after boot camp, I went to California, and was stationed there for about a year, and then they sent me to Vietnam, and came back, and I finished up my enlistment in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, a place called Sault Ste. Marie, and all those bases are closed now. Then I came back home, and I really came back home 3 months early, and this is how I ended up in North Myrtle Beach. Well, to start with, Merlin Bellamy was police chief in North Myrtle Beach at that time. And he was always friends with the family. He played music with my dad, and his family would get my family, and they'd play music. And that was before I started playing. And his daughter, Patsy, and I were good friends. And so anyway, while I was up in Michigan, I'd come home on leave, and she and I'd go out on a date here and there. But it was not like a romantic thing. It was like good friends going out and so forth. And so Merlin grabbed me one day, Chief Bellamy, I called him Merlin, because his nickname was the Big Wizard, and that's what everybody referred to him as. Anyway, he came to me. He said, "Fred," he says, "I can get you out of service 3 months early if you come help me police through the summer. I need somebody to walk the waterfront down there they got a crew that works down there, and then when the bars close, we'll put you in a car at Windy Hill or Cherry Grove. Those are two slowest beaches at the time. Can you imagine that now? But I mean, if you seen one car at Cherry Grove past midnight up there, man, that was news. And almost the same with Windy Hill. So anyway, so I laughed. I said, "Chief, where you want me to play? I never wanted to police." He said, "I'm sure I can get you out. You can't get me out of the military 3 months early." And he said, "I can." I didn't know that he had contacts with the Pentagon, and I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." Well, son of a gun, if he didn't, the base commander called me in the office up there about 2 weeks later. He said, "Sergeant Morris, you sure you don't want to re-up?" "No, I want to go. I need to get out and go back to school." He said, "Well, the reason I'm calling you and talking to you, I was going to make sure you wanted to get out." He says, "Chief Merlin Bellamy from North Myrtle Beach Police Department called me. Said he's a nice gentleman. I liked him, and he said that he needed your services down there at the police department. If I was willing to let you get out 3 months early." He said, "Do you want to get out 3 months early?" I said, "You can let me out 3 months early?" He said, "Yes." He said, "This man's got contacts at the Pentagon." I said, "Lord have mercy." I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So me and my buddy got in the car. He was from Georgia, and he'd never been to Myrtle Beach, and we get in my little Volkswagen. We start heading towards home. And I told him, I said, you can stay 2 or 3 days with me, and we can go up to the Galleon and the Pad and drink a little buttermilk. That's beer, by the way. Before I start working, see. He was all excited about that. So he came down, and on the way to the Galleon that night, we were by the police department. I said, maybe I need to go in there and let them know that I'll start Monday. I'll be in here Monday morning. This was Friday night. Well, Chief Bellamy was in there. Oh, I'm so glad to have you. He took me in the room, swore me in, and told me to get in the car. And he rode me all around the rest of the till he went home. And I had my friend, he had to go to the Galleon by himself. And he told me to be at work the next evening at 5 o'clock. You didn't have training back then. They gave you a uniform, a set of handcuffs, and a gun, and a badge, and a blackjack, and said, go police. And so I got my sergeant, and here I go. And that's how I started my career. Well, we had an agreement that I was going to leave in September to go to Coastal. It was USC Coastal at the time, and because that's what I really got out for, was to go to college. So anyway, I left him, and I went to Coastal for a year, and then got married, and then I started working at the post office I worked post office about 5 years, and so my first marriage, I went back to school, ended up in a divorced first marriage, and I married a girl too young. And she woke up and found out what she was married to. She hauled butt. We laugh about that today. No, anyway, we split up, and I went back. I moved to Columbia to finish up school, and I got my degree. I wanted to be a lawyer, but I run out of money. Sold everything I had, including my golf club, and so the only thing I didn't sell was my banjo, and I kept that. But so when I finished my degree and I found out I couldn't go back to school, I wanted to go back home, so I ended up going back home, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I ended up getting a job with the city. And the first job I had with the city was as utility billing, and the meter readers and cutting people's water off, that kind of stuff. I was kind of supervising that. And about 3 months later, they transferred me. I was the staff assistant to the city manager, Jack Etheridge at the time, and Joe Saleeby was mayor. And then he made me personnel director. Can you imagine me being personnel director for the whole city? But that's how small the city was. It's in the infancy years, And so I did that job, and then they had some people leave the other departments they was doing consolidating, and so they sent me on assignment to the sanitation department, and there I became sanitation director. I got a big salary jump, which would be, people laugh at it now what this salary was, but I think it was $22,000 a year to do that job, and plus I had to organize a Clean City Committee, which I did, and I coordinated that. And a little bit later, they made me public works superintendent as well as the sanitation. Then I had Parks and Recreation. I was on the Clean City Committee. We built Yow Park in Windy Hill, on Windy Hill Road. That was one of our projects. We won a national Keep America Beautiful award for that, and went to Washington, D.C. to receive that award. But anyway, while I was doing that, I was lobbying for a job citywide, talking to city managers. They needed a special enforcement person. That we were in the building boom here. You had high rises going up and moving the old beach cottages was being torn down and moved, and but they didn't have a lot of good ordinances. They had trash and litter going everywhere on the ocean front, and, especially when the wind was up, and which was often. And so we were lobbying to get somebody in this position, and we thought it was going to be a retired policeman maybe want to take that. Well, as it ended up, Jack Etheridge wanted me to take that job. So I transferred over, and I came into the police department as a sergeant. And because I was wearing a lot of hats, plus keeping the Clean City Committee up. And I enforced codes. I guess they call it community standards now. I don't know what they call it, but they called it special enforcement back then. And I did it all by myself. That was a tough job. You make some happy and a lot of people mad. And or maybe vice versa. But I took that job, and little by little I grew with it. I also policed. I went to the police academy, I'll say I did police work. I worked the waterfront down on weekends, and ultimately through the years I wore a lot of hats. One time for a short period of time I actually supervised the beach. I was a public information officer. I was what all did I do? Wrote grants for them, did monthly reports and annual reports, and I supervised animal control. That was a headache. And I did a lot of things for the city, and I loved doing it because this was my city. I loved this town, and I still do. And so that's how I ended up being a policeman. I never figured I was going to be one, but I guess I was. The first memorable moment that I had was 1967. I was a junior in high school, and I was not a policeman then, but I was. It was during the Easter weekend, and they had hired me on big weekends to cook hamburgers and stuff at the pavilion, and it's extra money, dating money and stuff. And but you got to understand this era. This was the Vietnam era, and the people were starting to protest the war. And North Myrtle Beach was more of a party area than Myrtle Beach by far back then. Well, we didn't want Fort Lauderdale to get the best of us. They always had stuff going on and riots and stuff. And the 67 riots that happened here at Ocean Drive, it was Ocean Drive then, and it wasn't even North Myrtle Beach then, it was like a year before that they merged, was because a bunch of too much drinking, too drunk. And they had 400 people got arrested that night, and believe it or not, only one was local, and he ended up being a Rhodes Scholar, and went on to Duke to become a psychiatrist. The only one that got arrested. I'm not going to mention his name, but it was funny. He got in the middle of it, and you got to understand, Ocean Drive Jail wasn't very big. It's where Flynn's is on Main Street now. And the county jail at the crossroads, Nixon's Crossroads, it was full. Myrtle Beach was helping us out and filled their jail up, and took what they could take to Conway. So they were actually chaining them to the trees outside the police department. Anywhere they could hold somebody, they would do it. And then that got out of hand, and they brought Eugene Platt's fish truck from Cherry Grove and parked it on the boulevard right there close to the horseshoe. And they were putting the prisoners in the back of the fish truck where they could transport them wherever they were going to take them. Well, I was flipping them burgers, and the owner's son, Ted Harrelson, come running through the pavilion. Shut the doors, pull the doors down, pull the doors down. They're having a riot outside. They're having a riot. So we run everybody out, pulled the doors down, and we went to the bingo room, had a great big old plate glass runner. So we watching the riot in Technicolor through the glasses. I never figured out why they didn't bust that glass out, but they didn't. Well, I seen Bobby Strickland. There was Bobby. He had, Bobby was younger back then, and he had a German Shepherd, looked a little bit like Jolene. And he had a 10-foot leash on that dog, and I didn't see nothing but teeth on that dog. And he had a 10-foot circle where he was, and Ed Rowell was a big man. He was like 6'6", and he was much a man. He was back to back with Bobby, and he had a stick in one hand. Bobby had the dog in the other hand and a stick in the other, and they were going around and around. And the crowd was throwing beer cans at him and rocks and all that stuff, and just drunk. And I seen Ed Rowell get hit right in the head with a rock, and blood was coming down. I said, Lord have mercy. I got a little bit scared, to be honest with you now. I'm 17 years old watching this stuff. And then they tried to break the door down on the fish truck, and they shot tear gas in there. I said, Lord have mercy. I said, it was something. And so anyway, that's why they've always since then been very careful about that beach. And the amount of crowd, and that's one, they used to have 200,000 people get down on that beach on Easter Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And the chief at that time, he would tell us, you don't step a foot on that beach in the daytime. He said, if you do, you're going to start a riot. They'll start throwing stuff at you, and you stay off of it. If I catch one of you men go on that beach to get some, I'm going to fire you. And if you got fired on Easter weekend, you'd be messed up bad. And so anyway, we listened to him. One time we got another it was a funny story, but it was a true story. We had a big crowd. It's about a couple 100,000 down on the Strand. It was Easter Saturday. And they had a lady, there used to be a little park down there at First Avenue on the beach. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was a condo right beside it. And the lady that was staying at this condo, she must have been a little old lady, I don't know. And she called in to the station. She was seeing all these people down there, and she called in and said there was a riot going on the beach. Well, the dispatcher was in training. I ain't going to mention his name. They shouldn't have had him on the radio at during the height of the Easter weekend, but he gets on there and calls a riot on the radio. Said, we got a riot at First Avenue South in the Strand. The radio, you got to understand how the traffic was on the radio then, during Easter weekend. It got quiet. Got real quiet. And then, all of a sudden, Senator comes on. And he says, cars, stand by. Stop till I give you a word. So he sent a couple officers. I think it was Guy Johnson, and another one went down there to the beach to see what he wanted to see what was going on down there. And they come back and said, Chief, there's not even a fight down there. Everything's fine, just people having a good time on the beach. So he got back on. He said, everything's 10-4. Go back to your areas. Go back to your area. You got everything calmed down. And then he come on. He says, that dispatcher was on there. I'll be up there in 15 minutes. I need to have a conversation with him. We all said, oh my Lord. We knew who it was. I said, oh Lord. They hid him at City Hall. They put him in the courtroom under a table where nobody would find him when he went up there looking for him, because we don't know what would have happened then. And he getting fired though. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, that was a funny story back then. It wasn't funny then for a while, but it ended up being funny. And I got to tell you another story about me. I've always been a jokester and prankster up there, and I still am. I took after my dad. And I come to work one morning early, like to smoke those cigars up there about 3 years ago. And, I love my cigars. And I come into work one day, and I was puffing my cigar, and it had been raining that morning. And I come in the old fire bay on the side over there. Well, he had some myrtle bushes used to on that side. Well, Diane Hardy worked in the records division, and Diane Anderson was clerk of court. And so they were coming in about the same time, but Diane Anderson went in another door. Well, Hardy and I started walking in the side door, and I said, well, let me open the door for you, Diane. She said, well, that's sweet of you. And I reached over to that myrtle bush, and I shook the thing, and she got drenched wet. Oh, she cussed me for 5 minutes, and she didn't use the same cuss word twice. And we went into the place. She said, I'll get you, Fred Morris. I'll get you. Well, at the time clocks over there was in the fire bay. That was the only place you could smoke at that time. So they had a big old ashtray over there, and I always smoked my cigar a little bit before I punched in, and I'd lay my cigar over in the tray standing up. And when I take a break, I'd go and take a few puffs. Well, I was writing a grant that day, and I didn't really get it back there to take a break like I wanted until it was about lunchtime. So I noticed that Diane Anderson and Hardy kept rocking around and said, when are you going to take a break, Fred? I said, well, I'm writing a grant. I don't have time today. I used to put a little sign on the door, writing a grant where people wouldn't disturb me. And so I guess it was about 1 o'clock, and I was going to head to the biscuit shack for lunch. And I went over there and grabbed my cigar and was going to light it up. I was having a hard time lighting that cigar. It wasn't wet or anything. It was dry. I looked at it. I kept trying to light it. I finally got it fired up. Oh, I got fired up. And I took a couple puffs, and I spit that thing out. I like to have died. I was on fire. They had put Tabasco sauce with an eyedropper in the hole of my cigar, and that sucker set me on fire. And I looked over the fire bay, and there was Diane Anderson and Diane Hardy and 3 or 4 others over there at the fire department. They were falling in the floor laughing at me. So she got me back. But we had always had stupid for. Now the biggest story I shouldn't tell this, but I got to tell it anyway. We were in-service training. I always enjoyed in-service training. We used to have a lot of fun doing that, the guys. And that's when you really get to know guys a lot. And that, like big weekends like Easter or Memorial Day, when you really work side by side with somebody. Well, we had CASA. I don't know what the exact name for it. It was Citizens for Domestic Problems. And they had the coordinator of the county, and she would come and speak to the different departments about how domestic situations happen. And I don't know if they still even do that or not. But anyway, she was going to give a little hour session, training session for the guys. Like I said, we were wearing white shirts then. So I was over there at the, I came in the door. Guy Johnson and I we was always funning each other, and Asa, I remember Asa Bailey sitting in the back, and I had a cup of coffee in my hand. And I took a sip of coffee, and I heard something, and I believe Asa Bailey broke wind, and I know that's what it was. He said he burped, but I don't think so. I think he broke wind, and I spit my coffee out. It went through my nose. I was choking to death, but I was laughing at the same time. I had luggers hanging out my nose, and I was trying to get out the door. I fell on the floor, hit my head on the wall going out the back door, and almost knocked me out. And God Johnson said, "Fred, you all right?" I said, "No, I ain't all right." And I'm still laughing and about to lose my breath. And I finally get back up, and I was going to go back in for the training course, and the coordinator, her mouth was wide open. And I had barfed all over my shirt, and I'll come back in there to sit down. And God said, "Fred, you can't do that. You can't go back in there looking like that." I said, I looked left, "I'm sorry." And I just walked out. I didn't go to that training session. We're always doing crazy stuff like that. Now, I can tell you something else on policing, serious policing. I couldn't last a week policing today. Oh no, I'd be on the 6 o'clock news every day. And a lot of the bunch I police with couldn't do it. It's a different, and the new people coming on don't do some of the things I'm telling you that we done. You know, it's a different way of policing now. And but you still got to enforce the law, just the way you do it. You got to understand, when I was policing, you know, you didn't have cameras and you didn't have videos. That's good and bad. A lot of those videos and recorders that they wore saves the officers' butt most of the time. But not always, probably, but most of the time it does. But I'm going to tell you, I didn't like them. And I'll give you an example of it. I policed the waterfront down there. Dennis Seckler, Neil Palmer, and I walked the beat down there. We'd put Neil in a golf cart because he was older enough. And we used him to go through the parking lots to watch the car break-ins, you know, behind Ducks and then Crazy Zach's and those places. And he couldn't make an arrest unless a full-time officer was there. And Dennis and I walked the beat. We walked about 10 miles a night down there. I was a little bit slimmer back in those days than I am now, but when you walk 10 miles a day, you can get slimmer. But and we basically walked that beat to keep trouble down, fights down, keep drunks out of cars as much as we could, and we did a good job with that. And I mean, we wasn't really strict, you know, just, you know, we worked Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday night, and then when SOS came or something, a big weekend, we'd work another day or two, you know, like Easter would come. And but we did a good job there. Of course, we knew the business people real good. You get a camaraderie, not coming out right. A good rapport with the business people when you down there policing, and so and also the kids. Some of the local kids that went down, they knew us, some from out of town. I say out of town, we call them local if they were a radius like from Whiteville, you know, around Green Sea or Conway or places like that, and they'd come down on Saturday night and Friday, Saturday night, and they'd always speak to us, and so we like open display. You know, if somebody had a open bottle or an open can of beer, and you obviously could see that's what it was, we would go up there, "Sir, ma'am, you need to pour that beer out, throw it over there in the garbage can." And 99% of them would do that. And there was 1% that wouldn't pay you any attention. They'd try to, nope, don't you drink it down. You take another sip and it's going to cost you. Throw your beer away, and you can't be on the sidewalks in public with an open drink. Now, I'm not going to go as far as sniff your cups, but the bottles and the cans, not going to cut it. Throw it away. I just paid $3 for that. I said, well, go pay 3 more and get you another one, go inside. And so that's the kind of policing we do. And most of the time they went along with it. Now, even fights that happen in the beer joints, Zacks or Spanish gagging, there's always two sides of it, and most of the time it was about a woman to begin with. They've seen so-and-so's girlfriend or another guy or something like that. And sometimes some of the local guys, we've even brought them outside, and I call them, put them in timeout, sit over there until I get them a ride home. We call it timeout. And if you get off that stool, you're going to go to our hotel, and saves a lot of them behind that way. But they'd be fighting inside. Well, nowadays they want to send a daggum bomb squad in or SRT. You don't need that when you got a fight inside. We were used to bringing drunks out of bars. We've been doing that for years. When they were fighting and so forth, we learned how to do it, and most of it's with your mouth. That's why a recorder wouldn't do good, or video camera wouldn't do good either. And I'd get in there, and I know everybody's probably told you I used to use the wedge. That was me. I'd get my hand, that left hand on that belt, inside the belt. You ain't going nowhere. I had you complete control, and I had my right arm free to get to my what I needed to get to. And I never had to hit somebody with my baton, but 2 or 3 times, and I'd hit those pressure point areas, common peroneal and stuff like that behind them. They had to do that with some football players, and that worked. They'll go to the ground after a bit, and you pop them behind that knee. And but I'd get them in there, and they would start fighting and resisting, and I'd whisper. I call that the unknown tongue to them. I said, listen now, you need to straighten up now. There's 2 sides of the story. Let's get outside and let's hash it out now, okay? Don't show your button here. And you don't understand, officer. She's with another man. I said, yeah, tomorrow's another day, and you just you don't need to be in the same place if you got girlfriend problems, okay? Let's calm down, go outside, and don't show you, but you don't need to go to jail. I'm trying to help you, son. And they do pretty good, and all of a sudden they'll see somebody they knew going out the door. When I'm holding that wedge on them, see, going out the door, and they start bucking up again. And I said, all right now. I said, now, don't you mistake my pot belly and my gray hair. Don't let it cloud your clear thinking, because I can go to your butt and will, and I don't play fair. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? You better straighten up. Well, you can't say that with recorders now. They'd get in the courtroom and throw it out, and you'd be on the 6 o'clock news. But it did help back then, because it took the fight out. 99% of them, when I whispered those words to them, they knew what I was saying. And I had a couple that tested me on that when I was trying to put them in the car. And they kept fighting me, and I kept trying to and I had to start. I used my knee in that thigh, tried to get him in there. And after about the 3rd or 4th one, the fellow fell in the car, and I hit my daggum knee on the apex of the door, and like that broke my kneecap. So it was kind of tough back. I never. Most of the time I didn't have to. I wouldn't use spray at all to start with. That stuff would be all over the place with that wind down there, but we had it was that kind of police. And then we went on. I'd go with other officers on serious cases. I used to hate to go on with them on suicide cases or hated domestic cases, and we went on a couple robberies. Some of those were funny. We had one guy from Georgetown. 3 of them was come down here to rob Anderson Brothers Bank, and he said, "Y'all go rob the bank," and he said, "I'll pick you up. We'll take off." Well, we had in-service training that particular day. Didn't have one officer on the whole north end, but he happened to be right there in that area, And the driver seen after they robbed the bank, he spotted that policeman. Well, he went back to Georgetown, and the other two come out the door, and he wasn't around, so they shot in those woods over there where you go up the Cherry Grove exit. So we had to surround that thing, and that was a funny. I think Paul Sheets had to put a tackle on one of them was running, but it was a lot of stuff like that. You know, we'd laugh about anything, but we'd had serious calls, but we'd always make light of the situation. You know, you react when the chips are down, and then you worry about it later. And but it was good working back there, but it's different what it is now. I was glad to see community policing come in. I think that's important when you can talk with the businesses and get to know the people, and even go to a convenience store, maybe have a cup of coffee with them, something. You know, just now I'm retired now, been retired for a long time. Bill Kennedy retired from the dispatch, and Zanfordino from the fire department, Ziggy Zanfordino. And we go meet up there to the Shell station on Monday and Wednesday. It's about 5:15, and we'll sit up there and have coffee till about 6:30, and we call it the Liars Club. And actually, we say you tell lies. I said, well, the stories are good. It gets better, but actually that stood for living in a relaxed situation. And so, you know, we do that, and we stay close. We go out together, you know, with families, and we stay close, and I'm still very supportive of our police department. I watched Buddy grow up. He was a good boy. I policed with his daddy, and Renee worked the dispatch, and Buddy was a good guy. I mean, I'm not just saying it because he passed. He was a good guy, and he was a good family man, and he loved his job, and that just broke everybody's heart when he left us. And so, you know, it's hard losing guys. But I got to tell you another couple funny stories. This is the truth. Now, there was a female officer, and I don't know what her name was, and her car had a flat tire out there in the parking lot, and she lived parked in the back of the place. And so Bill Kennedy and Donald Pravat was working up in dispatch, and they said, well, you know, it's slow today, and we'll go out there and change the tire for you. Pull it up in the fire bay. Pull it up here in the fire bay, and we'll, not fire bay, what do you call that, the Sally Port or something. Pull it up there, and we'll change the tire for you. Put it in the one that's not busy, not the one they bring prisoners. So they went out there, and they changed the tire for her, and she was so appreciative. Well, Pravat was so funny. He died here 2 or 3 years ago. But Pravat, he was so... he had the driest sense of humor, and you could believe anything he said. And he looked at the officer, and he said, ma'am, he said, we were glad to do that for you. But I want to tell you something now. You need, when you get time, you need to go up someplace, and you need to put some summer air in the tire. And so you're running off of winter air right now, and you need to put some summer air on it. And she said, I didn't realize that. And I didn't notice. Oh, yeah. He says, just go up there and tell them what you need done. I think she went to the Walmart or somewhere. And she went up there and said that she needed to put some summer air in the tire. And they started laughing. That's the kind of stuff that they used to do. They had a dispatcher there one time. They got to talking about the bottled water had just come out, popular, you know. And they were saying, you know, Walmart's got some, they got their brand is very good, you know. And this same guy, Pravat, he said, well, you know, you need to go try this diet water. It's excellent. And you know, she went to Walmart and asked for diet water, and the one she was asking helped her try to find it. He didn't know the difference in it either. We were crazy back then.
Can you tell me, you've told me this story before, but can you tell folks about the time, I remember I sat out there while you were, when the Liars Club was in session, and you told me a story about a kid that ran from you, and you ended up catching you, twisting your ankle, did something, and the kid came back and checked on you, or whatever, and you ended up letting him go. Does that one ring?
Oh yeah, that's when I knew it was time to retire. Yeah. This was the last summer of let's see, I guess it was I retired in there was the last summer 2000 that I worked a beat down there on the foot patrol. And I was a captain then, but I still didn't, they told me, said, you don't have to do all this as a captain. I said, I want to do this. That's where my love is, down on that foot patrol. And so we got down there. Anyway, we were having trouble like they always did at 2nd Avenue South, between Hillside and the Boulevard. All them houses, they didn't behave during spring break and stuff. And they were just raising sand up there at this one house. And so I had went up there and like the same old song and dance. And so I got the owners out, and there was 4 or 5 girls that their daddies had paid for everything, I think, and it's in their name. So I got them out, and I said, listen now. I said, I know that you can't control this house party. You got people here that you don't know who they are. And that's what happens at house parties. But you know who gets in trouble? You. Now, I've told you before, they're out in the street. They got beer cans everywhere. They bring in negative attention to themselves. And when they bring negative attention to themselves, they going to see us. You understand what I'm telling you? I said, we can help you disperse this party. Or you can do it, whatever you want to do. But if we come back here again, and they're in that street, and these beer cans is all over that property, we're going to start loading up the paddy wagon, and y'all going to be the first to get in it. You understand that? I said, I got the paddy wagon down there at the Horseshoe. Yes, sir. No, we'll break it up. I said, okay. Went down we come back about 30 minutes. Oh, it was worse. Oh, it was everywhere. So I said, I told the guys, I said, all right, I want some come in from the Boulevard. Some of the road guys, cars coming up there, bring the paddy wagon up, had the golf course up there, the foot patrol will go up there, and I said, start loading them up. And I said, I want a couple of the ones that's renting the house to be the first one to go. And so we got down there. Well, I wasn't going to really make any rest. I was going to let them do it. Well, there was one little character. He was sitting on the steps, and he was looking over there, and I was watching him. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just sitting there. And he looked over there at me, and he says, excuse me. He said, you fat SOB, cigar smoking, 4-eyed SOB. Oh, he had some names for me. And I looked at him. I went to him. Well, if I can't catch you in 25 yards, I ain't going to catch you. If I can get that left hand on that and for that wedge, you caught. I went for him. He started running around that building. Well, I didn't know that it was dark you couldn't see a thing back there. And all of my police career, if there's ever been a fence or a post or a clothesline or a ditch, I found it. I always found it. And I hit a post. Why would they be putting a post this high, 2 or 3 of them, in the back of that place? And I hit that post, and I did a 360, whoosh, right on flat of my back. I was hurting. And the rest of the guys was arresting people and doing the paperwork, and one thing. Well, the kid I was running to come back. And he says, officer, you okay? Looked at him. I said, are you okay, officer? I'm sorry. I'm sorry you hurt. He helped me up. I said, get out of here. I couldn't even have the heart to arrest him. Go on, let me. Lord have mercy. It was some of those, it was crazy time. I knew it was time for me to retire then, so I put my paperwork in. I guess in closing, the North Myrtle Beach is a special place. I'm probably one of the biggest, Chamber of Commerce should give me a job because I'm always speaking highly of North Myrtle Beach. I see people that talking about move to North Myrtle Beach. I said, we got a great school, good football, sports programs. We got a great city. We got good politicians. We got, I said that they don't care about, get involved in national politics, stuff like that. They fight for the city. And we got the best police and fire that you can find. And it's getting better each year. And I said, we got Chief Dana Crowell. She's worked her way up, and she's doing a fantastic job. And there's some good guys that's on the police force. A lot of the policemen don't know me because I've been gone a long time. But this city's going to be farewell with. And I can assure anybody that works here that you don't like working here, don't get up in politics. Don't go there. Don't go that route. Just do your job. Treat people like you want to be treated yourself, and you'll go a long way by doing that. And love this city. You'll learn to love it like I did. Of course, I was born and raised here, and I'm very proud where I'm from.